Good morning to all of you in the Devil Dog Day Trade community. My name is Michael, and we'll be going through our daily trade setup process for today, December 14th, 2021. Special welcome to all of you who have served or are serving in the armed forces. And of course, here we do save the best for last. So an even bigger welcome to all my fellow Marines out there. Semper Fi, jarheads. Sorry for the delay today. Had just a conflict of schedules, but we'll go ahead and get started. For those of you joining us for the first time here, we are on a journey together here, and we have people from all skill and experience levels as part of this community. However, information is presented in such a way so that it should resonate to all of those areas. However, if you have a question or comment, please leave us a note in the chat box if you're watching the show live, and we'll make sure that we answer that as quickly as we can. If you're watching the show later on, just leave us a comment or reach out to us through the email addresses posted, and we'll make sure that we get back to you with the information that you need as well there. So focus today is going to be on setting up for the FOMC announcement tomorrow, and also take a look at the events that have happened yesterday that drove some of the prices that we saw, and also stuff that's going on today. And literally right now, as you can see, PMI numbers have just been released. So let's just jump over to that real quick and take a look at those. Not the PMI information, CPI. PMI was yesterday. And so just real quick, yesterday we had the PPI information come out at 8:30 a.m. Not a significant hit to the markets. Overall, it was pretty positive. However, again, we had a little bit of some other interesting movements there based on the FOMC announcement that is coming up, and I'll talk a little bit about that, what the expectations were and what actually happened here in just a second. Today, you see right now, we've got a bunch of stuff from the Canadian markets and also the U.S. markets. We have CPI from Canada here coming out. We also have core retail sales and retail sales for the U.S. Let me just refresh this real quick so we can see what is going on here. So we had U.S. PPI came out, and we are at 0.8%, which is 0.3% above the target here, which even though it's a positive number, you'll see that the markets did take a bit of a dip here. So it's sometimes it's hard to know whether good news is a good thing for the market or good news is a bad thing for the market. That's why we pay attention to these and really just note that they're happening. We don't trade this news. We just know that the news will take us to our supply and demand zones a little more quickly than they would otherwise. But in the end, the supply and demand zones are what wins out. And so we just we monitor news just to know that the speed at which the price will approach there, and sometimes just noting that news can blow through smaller time frame zones rather than larger ones. Nothing else coming up today except for New Zealand dollar. So if you are trading that Forex, just keep an eye out for that at 2 p.m. And then of course we'll talk a little bit about the FOMC in just a minute. But just looking quickly at our correlation markets, just to kind of get an idea of where things sit before we get into that. For the DAX, we do see here that basically nothing has happened. Blow up the daily chart here real quick, and as you can see, we are still 5 days trading within this single large candle here. That was the second one that came out of our weekly zone there. So basically what this is telling us today is from the DAX perspective, an inside day. We shouldn't expect any big moves here, which again is pretty normal for FOMC stuff. News, particularly from the Fed, does affect the global markets as well. So you will see even some of the other ones that are non-U.S. markets reacting to that, or at least prepping for it. There's no other areas that we've got that we're interested in looking at here that we haven't already drawn up. So we'll just note that we do have a couple of these zones. Actually, I'm not sure why they didn't continue to show up here. I'll put them back on our 60-minute time frame here. We've got a couple of areas that we're interested in lower down here, and we just want to watch price come into those. These are relatively strong zones because they were all formed coming out of that overall weekly zone there. All right, let's jump over to TradeStation and continue on with our, again, we're just going to look at reference markets here real quick before we get into indexes and talk about FOMC. So from a dollar perspective, we are, let me just bring this up again. We talked a little bit about this yesterday, this weekly consolidation, and clearly we're still within this exact consolidation area here. It may go another 2 or 3 days. My guess here, and I hate using that word guess because we don't want to guess for these things, but the indicators are likely that this will change and we'll get this move out based on the news that comes out tomorrow with the FOMC. So just knowing that we're in that context, we know we're not going to take any longer term trades here, so we're really looking on shorter time frames and just quickly looking through the 240-minute chart, the 60-minute chart. There is really nothing here that we are that interested in. There were some areas on the euro chart, which is the opposite correlation to the dollar, that I think are a little bit stronger right now and kind of driving some of these price movements here. So we'll take a look at that as well. The VIX, though, volatility index here. Let's jump down straight to our 240-minute chart because that's where we have all of the activity at that we were looking at recently. We've got this larger 240-minute zone here, which we didn't think was going to work for a bigger move down, but so prices come down about 1.5, maybe 2 to 1 out of here right now. It did create a couple of other zones which we thought were interesting, but again, we're still very, very low in this overall move, so just not likely that we're going to see significant drops out of here before we get some sort of a correction. And as you can see here, this one area right here did provide a little bit of movement, but not really anything substantial. And so let me just mark that one real quick, get it out of our way here, and we'll go to a red. And then so we got the other one coming up here. This one's a little bit stronger. Wouldn't surprise me if we saw some price movement up here, but again, I am not holding my breath on this being any significant moves down from this area without a bigger retracement up first. And in particular, this setup, on the when we think about the Fed announcement coming up too, could be very easily for price to jump up from here all the way up into this 29.47 area, and that could be a good point for price to come back down for that bigger move down there. We'll just take a look at the 60-minute chart, see if there's anything that we're interested in immediately as we watch markets today and maybe even into early tomorrow. And as I'm looking through, up and left first and then down and left, there isn't any really good structures that I'm seeing that we're interested in. So keep that in mind when we talk about the indexes here in just a second. I want to go ahead and bring up the Nikkei. Just because even though we do trade it, it is one of our main reference markets as well. And a couple of things to note here, nothing on the daily that's close. From a 240-minute perspective, we do still have this area down here at 28,133. That is a very strong zone. Right as we look left, you can see prices changed over here a couple of times. So if price does drop here in the next day or two, we could definitely see a stronger move up from here, and that would also potentially correlate with the VIX movement as well that we anticipate coming. Looking at the 60-minute area here, go ahead and clean this. I don't think we got to this the other day, so we did have this area here, which really just came in, would have given us a 1-to-1, and then moved, and then touched back down here below. So we'll have to monitor what our stop should be for NK, just in case there's anything there that we want to change moving forward. But we did end up with that. We've got this other zone here as well on a 60-minute chart. Let me just scroll to the left so we can take a good look at it. Good solid zone. Let me zoom out of here again so I can get this whole picture zoomed in for us. These are ones where we've got price movement is close enough where this was a good solid one, zone 2 to take. It came out of this white space area right here, down in, and would definitely expected movement out of there. I would expect probably a little bit more movement before price comes back down, but it's not. It's definitely not a very, very strong area here. We'll see what happens when the U.S. markets open here at 9:30. If price is in here, comes back out again, and you're still in this trade, I would recommend just taking probably some additional risk mitigation factors with the announcement coming up tomorrow. Okay, index market. So just generally speaking, one of the things that a previous instructor of mine had gone over and done an enormous amount of research on and looking into, that generally speaking, I'll pop open the daily chart here as we talk about this. Index markets typically rise about 3 to 5% in the 5 days prior to an FOMC announcement. And it's one of those things that you can actually go and do some back testing on yourself if you're interested in validating that. You can go back and look at the announcement dates for every one of the FOMC ones on each the third Wednesday of each month. Mark that. With TradeStation, it's a pretty simple exercise. You can get your up and down markers here. As you can see, I can actually put a marker on here that shows the date, and you just count off 5 candles prior to that, and look at what price was at the 5 days prior, and just know that you expect about on average you get a 3 to 5% increase there, and then you get a 1 to 2% drop the day after. So those are things we don't use them to trade on, but when they happen routinely around announcements like that, it's just good to know that is at least an expected result there. And so if we take the announcement date, and really it's going to be tomorrow, so you go so that's 1 day, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This would have been our target area here. We would have expected a 3 to 5% increase from this line right here, and as you can see, didn't get that. And especially yesterday, really did expect to get a little bit bigger push up yesterday based on that. Didn't take any trades on that, but just was kind of expecting that, and clearly that did not happen at all. So we've got a little bit of a different situation here. Generally speaking, whenever I say anything that is different than what I am used to, that's just a really clear indication to pause, right? A couple things, other instructors, other people have said, either take your hands off the keyboard, take your hands off the mouse, sit on them, right? Whatever it is that you need to do to not take trades when it's not high probability. We've talked about this a little bit before, right? Generally speaking, anyone that is talking about trading always tells you here's when to take trades. One of the things that they don't do a good enough job of doing, and I try and do some here, is identify the areas when it's best not to take trades. And so things like this, where the behaviors of the markets that are not expected or not normal, good time to just take that break. A couple of other areas too, like when I see all the major index markets, if they're not correlated, so they're not moving together, that's another good indication, right? That something is a little bit off, and you just might want to be a little bit extra cautious before you take any trades, particularly on smaller time frames there. When things like gold is typically in opposite correlation to the dollar. Right, dollar goes up, gold goes down. So if you see something like that that's happening, they're either going up or down together. Again, those are just good indicators of where you might want to just take a little bit of extra time. Make sure you review your trade setup. Make sure that you're making correct logical decisions, not based on emotion, not based on fear or anything else. So just an indication there. So we were expecting the markets to be up a little bit higher than they were right now, and then a little bit of a drop off after the announcement. Just my own personal opinion on this. I think we've got people that we're in just such an area of uncertainty right now, with never having been in this case where rates have been this low for this long, and in particular we've never spent as much money as we have in the last couple of years in the markets. So just we're treading into areas where we don't have good indicators for what's going to happen, and no good historical data either. So there's a little bit of fear coming in there. Keep in mind though, with the approach of pure supply and demand, we can eliminate a lot of that fear, eliminate a lot of that uncertainty. We don't really care what's going on. We're just going to be looking for those areas to take advantage of price movement as it happens. So what we'll be looking for now is, as you know, the futures markets are continuing to drop now, where are the areas below us where we could take advantage of these drops, of this other fear in the market? Everyone else is kind of panicking and selling. Where do we want to start buying at? Because we want to buy low and sell high here. So just pull these off. And so this is where we're at on a daily context. And again, remember, we still have this very, very strong area down here at 44.75 that we are looking. This would be a great place to get back in on another long if price comes back down here. In particular, if we see it lining up with other index markets, or maybe even the opposite correlation there on the VIX that we saw on that 240-minute chart. If the VIX goes all the way up to that area and price comes down into this area at the same time, great indication of a high probability trade here. We're not going to spend a whole lot of time on lower time frames today, but I do want to go ahead and just look at them just so we know that they exist. We've got this area on a 240-minute chart as well. Again, it's an area of interest for us, so would not expect either a longer term move here or that this would work. So when we see those dashed lines here, we know we have to look for some other indicator. RSI is a really good one. You know, look maybe potentially for price to be coming out of a Bollinger Band area, to some other indicator that price is going to turn here and take more of a confirmation trade here rather than a kind of a set and forget one where you expect price is going to change there. Nothing else being created above yet at this point that we're interested in. So jumping over to the 60-minute chart, yesterday we talked about a couple of these areas here that were all very high in our overall context, but because they were lined up, we had this area right here on the 60-minute chart. We also had the same zone on the NQ chart as well. So that was a good enough indication for me anyways. That was like, even though we were high on the overall context, let's go ahead and take this trade. So I took them in our simulation account here, and we've not done very well with them. Yesterday was I think our first down day in almost two weeks. So that's when we had a couple of those trades stop out. I kind of put a pause on things, regrouped, and so now we're looking for other higher probability trades to get us back on track again. So this one did not work for us, and because price movement was going down so strong, we didn't take any additional trades as well here. So looking down, so this one did work, actually worked again a second time. It was a little bit unusual. We had this area right here that was the dashed line. So again, a area that the reason why we weren't interested in it at a high probability perspective is we had already touched it right off the bat once price came back down here, but because it's an index market and it hadn't gone deep into the zone, we knew that there was going to be some other price movement here, and sure enough, we got a little bit of a 2-to-1 move there. But again, just too much additional selling pressure in the overall markets right now, so that one did not work. We've got another area that's marked down below. I will say that we are probably too far out to be interested in this one from a 60-minute perspective. Yeah, I'm just, so my own kind of gut reaction here, if I have to think about something for more than about 2 or 3 seconds, that the answer then is I'm trying too hard and shouldn't try that hard. So the only reason why I'm interested in this zone, again, because we are considerably below the Bollinger Bands here. If we were to get any negative divergence in this area, I would go ahead and take this, but I would be looking for that level of confirmation before we take a trade here. Again, with so much potential movement here, so much fear, so much concern about the FOMC announcement tomorrow, I wouldn't go lower than a 60-minute chart to look for any high probability trades in the next day or two, in particular tomorrow. I'll keep monitoring these things. If we can see something really good show up, that's with you know, with the trend on a lower time frame, we'll get that information out. But yeah, I just want to be very, very cautious today and tomorrow, especially right before and up until, you know, within about 30 minutes after the announcement tomorrow. So looking over at NQ, I'll just start real quick at this 60-minute just to show you where we, you know, what didn't work yesterday. And so we had this zone right here, the top one, same spot as it was on the ES. That's why we thought it was good. See, that one did not work. It was just too high in the overall context itself. Came back down. We came through this area here that was already previously used. And then as you can see, we had this, so this zone right here is the same one that we just looked at and said we probably weren't going to take on the ES. So this zone is in the same area. NASDAQ has already dropped through it, so that's a good indication of why we wouldn't want to take it, right? This is our confirmation on the other side of things of when not to take a trade versus when to actually take one. If you had set this up overnight, did we get entry on this? It would have been 15,958. Price came all the way down to 59.75. So no, it wouldn't have, even if we had to set up correctly, we still wouldn't have gotten any return on this. It would have just been a pure stop out here. Let's mark that as not working. Looking up and left from here, the only thing that is of even remote interest whatsoever would be a very quick retracement back up into this area right here. I'll make it dashed lines because we would need some other confirmation that this area is going to work. And really, it follows our zone structure, but it's not. I wouldn't say it's a highly likely one to work overall. All right. So nothing close on a daily chart. Actually, I do want to. I want to show where we're at on a daily chart because we do have. So the zone that we saw on the ES on the daily area that we were looking at, so interested in, is in the same location as this top one that already worked for the NQ. So I wouldn't expect this one for the NQ to work again. So if the NQ is weaker than the NASDAQ, or sorry, if the NQ is weaker than ES, than S&P 500, and as price comes back down through here, if the NASDAQ hits this area of interest that we've marked here at the same time as ES hits that zone, that would be another really good indication that these areas are going to work, and that would allow us to take a trade in this zone with that additional confirmation. So that's why we're interested in this lower area here at maybe a little bit higher level than we had been previously. On the 240-minute chart, we are coming up to this area. Again, we have a zone in the same area on ES that we're still fairly far away from. So because those zones are not lined up right now and price is not, lining up the way that we would like it to, I would be hesitant about taking this today. Look for additional confirmation. We'd look for maybe RSI negative divergence on a 60-minute chart, or some other movement either in YM or RTY that lines up with another demand zone in this same general area as well. Okay, let's see here. So we already looked at the 60-minute chart. Yeah, we got that area defined. Great. All right, and that's it. Again, we'll watch lower time frames throughout the day. If something really enticing shows up, we'll send that out. But right now, I'm staying away from lower time frame trades until FOMC is completed tomorrow. So I'll get these ones cleaned up here. And interestingly enough, we did have this zone right here work. And you can see it kind of well here, right? These are ones where I wouldn't have, and I didn't take this one. It was these are the types of ones, especially in the overnight market here. You'll see this zone formed in the London session. and so right here, this greenish area here, this is the London session. Overall, this box is your overnight session. Price came all the way back down in here, but too much time had gone by since the zone is created, especially since it's on a 15-minute time frame here, and we didn't have any other confirmation that it was going to work. So that would be why it wasn't taken. I did zoom into this 15-minute chart just to show this right here. So because we have a fair amount of weakness in the market right now and some potential fear coming in with the FOMC announcement, you do have a reasonable short setup. And I'll draw the whole entire zone. Obviously, that's a very big zone, so you'd want to narrow that down if you're going to take this. But it's done in the U.S. market open area, so relatively strong. And again, if we've got enough fear coming in, this might be a good entry point to get in on a little bit longer move coming down based on where the announcement goes from FOMC tomorrow. And we do have this area here overnight as well, right? This does fit our trade plan qualifications. However, it's again overnight, even though it's London session and these are shorter time frames, I would just be very, very cautious of anything in these areas today and tomorrow. So you'll always need additional confirmation before you take any of these lower time frame trades. Just going to mark these as areas of interest for us and move on. Okay, take a look at RTY. This may give us some additional clues as to what this market may do, since this is the small business side of things. Let's look at a daily time frame real quick. We are coming back into this same area of support. All right, we've got, if you look back through this line right here, all right, you have got, prices come into this area multiple times now, and it just cannot get. Look at how many times it's come into there. So a lot of strength in here. We really need this area to break before we can confirm any sort of a longer, bigger move down. And just a note here, nothing to do about this yet. We have to wait for these things to form. You do have what could be a picture perfect zone forming right here. Price has to come down and take out this pivot low over here. If price doesn't come in here and take this out, these are not zones anymore. If it comes in and takes it out, these turn into zones, and I would absolutely look to take retracements back up in here for a longer term move down. $240-minute time frame. We are just, again, still struggling to get below this area here, and we don't have a lot of strength in the markets. There's nothing here that I'm interested in that's outside of those daily areas anyways, so we won't spend any more time there. On a 60-minute time frame, we've got in a pretty close to a negative divergence in RSI in the bottom end here. Technically speaking, price did not actually set a new low here, so I would wait. If you're taking anything here, if there's anything of interest, to you, I would get, again, confirmation here. We don't have any zones whatsoever to take coming along here. This would just be an indication that we might be getting a little bit of a correction back up again. As I'm looking up and left, though, nothing outside of those daily zones. I'd wait for something to form in those daily zone areas before I would look to get in on anything here. And even this area up here, this zone that we do have drawn up here at 2304, it's a 60-minute zone. Again, make sure you get additional confirmation right now. We've got prices going a long ways past here. For the next 2 days at least, if price comes up into this area, I would just be a little bit more cautious until we get through the announcement. Since we do want to look at all the indexes, we're going to look at YM just to see if there's anything here that would give us another indication of what what is coming. Again, we're looking for, correlation of all of the index markets coming into big announcements like this. This helps us define, what we're going to do about them. We have a daily zone right here. Looks like this corresponds to the 240-minute zones that we had on ES and I think even maybe on NQ as well. However, price is not really lining up at the same levels for them. As I'm looking down and left underneath all of this area here, I am not seeing anything that I'm interested in down there. Let me just zoom out real quick. Yeah, nothing at all that I'm interested in on a daily time frame here. A 240-minute one, we've got this area here. I think this one probably lines up a little better with the other 240-minute time frames. Again, area of interest only. The structure is a little bit off. Look for additional confirmation, either negative divergence on RSI or even multiple indexes coming into the same area at the same time. And on a 60-minute time frame, this could be why we're getting this little bump back up right now. This is actually a good setup on the Dow. I am here, and still just coming out of this white space, but price hasn't gone too far past it. So this could be why we're getting this little bit of bounce up right now in all of the index markets themselves. And just, but again, I'm not expecting these to move any significant area. We do have very, very solid looking zone right here on the Dow. This happened as the markets were opening yesterday. So strong zone here. If you look left on this area, you see it took out this previous zone right here, and keep looking left. You can see prices change in this area multiple times. Good strong indicators. Just to note, this is still going to be a counter trend trade, but this might be a good place to get into a bigger move down. Again, look for some correlation with the other index markets to see if they have zones or other areas of interest in those same areas before we take that one. It's a short on an index fund, so we just want to make sure that we're very careful there. Okay. All right. So the other places that we look prior to coming up to an FOMC announcement, we also want to look at our bonds. So I'm going to start with the TLT, so the actual 20-year index fund. And I just want to show one area right here. We do have a couple of 60-minute zones, one of them that hit yesterday, and then one that's a little bit above where we're at right now. These are good, good solid areas. You can see price has already moved a little bit off of this first one. However, so we'll take a look at the 10 and the 30 year to see if we get any additional confirmation that anything could happen from this area. Let me here. All right. So yeah, let's go take a look at the other ones real quick. I want to see what we've got going on there to see if we got confirmation of that area is actually going to work or not. Let's pop up our 10-year bond. And we had this, just real quick, show you the 240-minute area, because we had this line that we were looking at, and sure enough, price came up above here, which means we're probably not as interested in this lower level right now. But just looking at, generally speaking, where any other areas of even interest are that we could correlate in with this. We do have this set up right here. And this roughly corresponds to where those zones are at on the 60-minute on TLT. So again, this is maybe an indication that price could jump up into here and then drop back down again. Let's take a look at some other time frames here. I want to look at the 60-minute real quick. And I'm looking up here. I don't see anything that's reasonable. Nothing I want to try and look at there. So let's jump over to the 30-year bonds. You can sometimes get a better view. Not sure why that flipped over to natural gas. All right. 30-year bonds are a little bit stronger than the 10-year ones. So we might get a little bit bigger push up. We look here on the 240-minute chart. We are not seeing anything that's remotely close to what the 10-year looked like. This area here is just a little bit messier, and it's also significantly further up. But let's zoom in on it, because technically speaking, yep, this meets our structure. Look at those areas here. They're a little bit further up than the 10 year. So I think I'd have to have all three of the markets coming into one of those two zones there at the same time before I would even be remotely interested in taking something like that. So I'd say we got some indications that if bonds push up again, we could hit that drop, which then, generally speaking, that's the opposite correlation to the index markets. They typically, work in opposition like that. So we can look for that too, especially as we come into the announcement tomorrow morning and then in tomorrow early afternoon. But those are areas that we want to look out for, and we want to, again, get that confirmation that we've got multiple areas or multiple securities coming into those ones at the same time. As I'm looking, for any strength in these markets, we've got some indications. Nothing on a 240-minute chart that's not already marked. Nothing on a daily. I'll bring up this 180-minute chart just because this is one of those ones where, if something happens, right, then something else could happen. So you've got a really interesting area right here where you've got a good zone structure with this one right here. However, you really need price to take out this previous pivot high over here before you're interested in taking this. It hasn't yet. If it keeps coming back down, I wouldn't take this one. So I'm just going to go ahead and pull it off. But if price comes back up, this would then become a zone that would show a little bit of strength in the 30-year bond area. Just quickly look back at the 10-year one just to see if there's anything that's similar to that. We do have that same area on the 180-minute chart on our 10-year bonds. And this one did break this previous pivot high as well. So let's go ahead and mark this one. Again, I'm going to mark it as an area of interest only for now, because in the middle of these announcements, you just want to be very careful about how these are taken. You need additional confirmation before you take any of these going into a major announcement like that. All right, and then the only other final thing that I'll just take a quick look at here, because I want to jump in and look at a couple of our cryptocurrencies as well. And, yep, all right, is the gold. So gold can sometimes will be impacted by the announcement tomorrow, and so we want to look and see if there's any areas that we want to take advantage of. And we'll start with the daily time frame. We're still in this massive white space area, and we've got nothing that we're remotely interested in on a daily time frame until we get all the way down to this area down here, 1638. Not likely price is going to drop that far in the next day and a half. However, if it does, then we are very, very interested in this area, both of these ones. Here, I'll go ahead and mark this one a gray as well so you can see it a little bit better. These would be very, very high probability areas. They're down below all of this white space. You'd be well outside of Bollinger Bands probably by the time you get down there. And again, good structure all the way on the little left-hand side where these zones are at. 240-minute time frame. We'll just keep looking at this one. We did get our good indications of taking this one based on our 60-minute negative divergence on RSI here. And price is coming back down in here. At this point, I would be very surprised if this held up again. It didn't quite hit our nominal target of a 4-to-1. But again, this wasn't a high probability area anyways. So it's not a surprise that it didn't come all the way up there. And there's nothing else down here below until we get into those daily zones that I'm interested in. Last time frame we'll check is 60-minute. I don't want to go any lower than this. And again, as I'm looking down and left, I'm not going to even think about taking 60-minute trades on this area and moving this back up. This was a very clear counter trend trade with no good indications of a higher time frame zone to take there. All right, so very quickly, let's just take a look at some of our cryptocurrencies. Let me flip back over to our TradingView platform, and I'll bring up. So just to flip through these probably very, very quickly, unless we've got something that just jumps out at us. No big change in Bitcoin. We still have the daily zone below that we're interested in. And then we've also got the 240-minute short as well up here. That'll be really interesting to see how all the cryptocurrencies respond to FOMC as well. I saw some additional articles in the last 24 hours or so of people trying to convince, I guess, the world really in general, everyone else out there, that cryptocurrencies are your hedge against inflation and against uncertainty in the markets, but they're all dropping at the same time right now. So I'm not sure anyone's really buying into that at this point. Ethereum, we're coming back down into this daily area here that's already been used. It wouldn't surprise me if this one worked again, at least for a smaller time frame trade. Right, so look for that. Let's see. You don't care about the USD one. DOT. We have no zones below that we're interested in right now, and just the same short that Bitcoin has over here on the 240-minute chart. Dogecoin, a little bit of spike on that overnight, interestingly enough. That did blow through this same area right here. Let me pull this one up. So this is basically the same formation we have on Bitcoin and on DOT as well. As you can see, it just blew through that like it was standing still. But now you're getting a pretty significant drop again here. I'm not sure why price changed there. We didn't have any zones identified here. Actually, let me just pop open the hourly time frame. Nope, nothing there either that I would consider having traded. All right, AVAX. We'll go through about 3 or 4 more of these really quickly. There are no zones to look out for here. Shiba is still in this daily time frame. You can see here we needed to break down below there for anything to get in long on this one again. And Matic, these zones have already been used. CRO, there's nothing defined below here. WBT, we've got that same short here on the 240-minute time frame that we have on Bitcoin and a couple of other ones. And then Litecoin, same short there. You can see on the 240-minute chart as well. But nothing else interesting here. So we'll go ahead and wrap it up for today. Again, we'll be monitoring a bunch of the smaller time frame areas on the indexes. If anything does come up there that we're very interested in, we'll send that out to the community. So be looking out for those messages coming out. And if anything does change drastically as far as how to prep for the announcement tomorrow, obviously we'll get that information out to you as well. Thank you guys very much for your support. Thanks for the participation in here. And again, subscribe to the channel to get notifications of our new educational series as they come out. And we'll look forward to seeing everyone tomorrow. Have a safe and happy trading day. I'll see you guys again tomorrow at 8:15 Eastern, and we'll do a little bit of a deeper dive into crypto again tomorrow.